have our conversation down. And if you haven't joined us for these small groups, they'll be posted in our resources folder. So the Sunday conversation is already up. And then yesterday's, I'll have that one up tonight. And several of our familiar faces are there from yesterday's conversation. So, you know, when I put these out there, it was really, the idea was giving people a chance just to gather in kind of affinity groups based on what was happening at the time. But it really is just a chance for us to talk about whatever's on your minds, knowing that a lot of our plans are going to shift, right? We'll be kind of moving in and out of different modes of instruction, perhaps where we are. So a good way to begin, since we all might not know each other, is just to kind of say who we are and where we are and what we do. And so if we can start with you, Rebecca, that'd be great.
Sure. Hi, I'm Rebecca Weifels, and I'm in school. We're not in school yet, but yeah, I'm in the building too, Liz. But you're ahead of us with the kids. We will be distance learning for the foreseeable future, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity to have conversations about that.
Great. And Rebecca's at Wayzata. You may have said that. I may have missed it, but yeah, Wayzata High School.
Thanks. Mm-hmm.
And Cheryl?
I'm Cheryl Bungham. I'm grade 6 through 12 here in Paynesville. And we're going to be starting hybrid. And we're in the block schedule, and they decided first quarter was just going to be a block. So all I have is 6th grade music studies and voice lessons. And then I don't start with my choirs until second quarter.
And when does the second quarter begin?
Second quarter begins in November. So I won't have the option of going outside most likely for any rehearsals.
Oh, wow. Got it.
And we're in hybrid.
And with your hybrid, what does that look like, if you don't mind telling us? How's it?
First half of the alphabet comes on Monday and Wednesday. Second half of the alphabet comes Tuesday, Thursday. Friday is a makeup day, or a day that kids can come in if they need extra help with things. And those kids who are at home are watching us virtually. So we're supposed to be continuing the same thing with the kids at home that we're doing with at school. So they're watching us at the same time, or we'll see how that works.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. I know Karen Lutkin is doing that same thing at Minnehaha Academy. So she was talking about that process for her a little bit yesterday. Kristen, welcome back.
I'm Kristen Prince. I'm at Discovery Elementary in Buffalo, and we will be starting in person, but the first week, Thursday, Friday, we'll do a hybrid just to kind of ease in a little bit and also give families the chance to figure out what's going on with that. So our hybrid will be for elementary similar to Cheryl's, except Friday will be every other group will do Fridays. And most of our, on the days they're at home, it'll be more like we send things to do for them at home. So it won't be an active, we don't have families that can, we don't have enough devices that families can tune in to things live as much. So that's our plan for now, but in person starting the second week.
Got it. And so just to clarify for me, just 2 days of that hybrid then, and then right to in person?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay. Martha?
Hi, I'm Martha Graber. I'm at Central High School. We won't be starting until the 8th, and we will be distance learning. However, at this point we are, I had a 2-hour window of time where I could go into my office at school and get whatever I needed to bring home, because they really at this point don't want us to come into the building. So that's the scenario, but I'm assuming that, we will eventually either go to, it's probably through a hybrid model at some point, and then maybe eventually face-to-face, or who knows, back and forth between hybrid and distance would be probably what I would suspect more likely. So I'm interested in hearing how they're setting that up for you in your different schools, what they're asking you to teach. I hear that from some that you're being asked to teach things that you're not necessarily certified to teach, or other horror stories. So it's good to hear that at this point you're doing choral music or vocal music.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Martha. And Martha's in St. Paul Public Schools, just for reference there. So that district, as we know, will be one of the linchpins about what happens across the state with decisions. Welcome, Emma, and welcome, Bethany. We're just kind of going around saying where we are and what the plan is right now in the schools. Liz, I think you're up.
Yeah, hi, I'm Liz Gullick. I teach high school vocal music at Eastridge High School, which is in Woodbury. We are one of 3 high schools in the South Washington County School District, so that's 833 for those of you that are like watching the numbers or watching what other districts are doing. Right now, we are at hybrid for all levels. The students are going to start coming next Monday, but we have a weird transition week next Monday where they're in even smaller sections than they would usually be. Like we have just 9th graders coming Monday, Tuesday, split in half, and then Wednesday, Thursday next week is everybody split into their AB days. And then after that, so starting the week of the 8th, we have A day and B days. They're not totally alphabetical, but it was by family because of other scheduling things. So it's not like a first half, second half of the alphabet situation. But then we have A day, B day, so Monday, Wednesday, A, Tuesday, Thursday, B. Friday is a flex day where in general most students won't be in the building, but we as staff have been told that we can like call in certain groups or small groups if we would like certain people to be there. Then our district, like everybody, also has a contingent of families that have chosen full-time virtual for their students. We are responsible for those same students. So on, for example, like normal Monday, I would have A day students in the room with me, B day students home, but also a group of, they're called Virtual Learning Academy, VLA students that are at home every day. So my original plan for a hybrid was to kind of flip it and be doing most of the singing at home and be doing more of the like score study, history, theory, that sort of stuff while they were in the room with me. But that went out the window because we have to post new content every single day. That is doable whether you are in the room with us or at home. So you post one lesson and everybody's doing the same lesson. I know, I see your faces. That's how I feel. And we haven't gotten a clear answer on whether an option is to live stream it and just have people singing along at home, because there were some major privacy concerns surrounding that last spring. So we have not received clarity on that. The administration's advice to everyone was to prepare one video virtual distance lesson and post it, and then the kids with you in the room can just get live help, but they're basically sitting in the room doing their distance learning with you. So that's the plan right now. And I'm saying right now because, as I'm sure is true for all of you, it's changed quite a bit in the last couple of weeks even. So yeah, because we have a school board meeting on Thursday, so we'll see.
Yep. Another change. So we're here in St. Louis Park, and my son is in that same, he's a first grader, and the plan is that the teachers have to teach to those in the room and those at home at the same time, to which I have raised a lot of fuss about. I just think it's unrealistic. But the positive side, and this is not my own thought, but those who were with me yesterday, you know, I have these wacky thoughts anyway, because I'm not in public school education anymore, so I can say all kinds of crazy things. No one's going to sue you over the privacy stuff with the live stream now. I mean, what judge is going to take that case? So I do think the live streaming thing, if you can get away with it, would be the best bet. But it's still not great, is it?
Yeah. I think one maybe interesting addition to all of that I just said, that's the secondary situation. Elementary in our district, because I heard somebody say they were elementary too, is also on hybrid, also the AB day thing, the same as the high school. And they did align it with families because there was a lot of concern about like students who were in elementary school, if they had older siblings, the families wanted those older siblings home on the same day so they could be childcare. But anyway, the elementary students, if they chose 100% virtual learning, they do have a dedicated teacher that is just their virtual learning teacher. So the elementary staff is either full-time virtual or hybrid. They're not doing both of those
Yeah.
things. And as a parent of students who are elementary students, I very much appreciate that we actually chose for my own girls to keep them home. So they're doing 100% virtual. And I, as a parent, am very glad that they have a teacher that is dedicated just to them. So
Yeah. That's wise. My sister in Alabama is teaching that way. She's in a virtual academy only. Yeah. So, Emma, I think you came in first. Welcome. Tell us your sitch.
Hello. I teach in Kimball, which is west of St. Cloud, and I teach K-12 vocal. So I have everybody. And because I'm in 2 different buildings, there's actually 2 different plans. So the high school is hybrid, so that's 6-12. You are either a Monday, Tuesday student or a Thursday, Friday student. And then Wednesdays are deep clean, and then it's called win days. So that's what I need. Teachers can call certain students to have Zoom meetings or Google Meet meetings or whatnot. Our principal has talked about letting the choir meet over at the church so that we can get hopefully more kids together. Of course, still spreading out a lot. But hopefully I can get then some kids who won't be together just to sing a little bit. So that's the plan at the high school. And then at the elementary, we are in person, but because the high school went hybrid, they are doing distance learning on Wednesdays, because that's also distance learning for the high school. So it'll just be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, which actually works perfect for me because we have only PE and music switching back and forth. We teach art in the classrooms. So usually it's like an A-day, B-day thing, but now it's just gonna be, you either have music Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday, which is way less confusing for me, so that's kind of nice. But I will be seeing elementary students about the same as I normally do. Luckily, we have a building right next door to the elementary that has a really big chapel. It's an old church. It's now used for community ed things. So I am able to take my bigger groups over there because some of my classes are in the 30s. So we would not fit in a normal classroom 6 feet apart. So luckily I'm able to use that space. But that's kind of the plans. Today was our first day back for teachers. So there's still a lot that I have to ask my principals, but that's kind of just what I'm dealing with right now.
Thank you, Emma. Bethany, welcome.
Hi, I'm Bethany, and I teach in Southeast Minnesota. It's called Spring Grove, and it's a rural area. So our K-6, they're going in person full-time, and they get 30 minutes of music every day. And then I also teach choir, and our 7-12 kids are going to school full-time, except they're taking Wednesday off. So everybody comes Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and we just shorten choir to 30 minutes. It's outdoors until the weather is nice, wearing masks, spaced out. So a lot has changed for me.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, now that we've got everybody in the room, the first thing that strikes me is that I always have to catch myself about judging the different plans, like that's the one I like, because like you have no control over that, right? But it's good to hear what your districts are doing. And so this is the time we can just kind of go back and forth across, and I can facilitate with you. Like, what do you want to hear from each other? What would be helpful to you at this time when I know you're balancing, pedagogically, what to teach, how to teach it, as well as logistically, how do you make it work in the situation? So anyone want to raise something they want to hear from everyone on first? Looks like Martha's reaching. Are you reaching, Martha? Okay, then Bethany, you can go next.
I guess always one of my first questions is like, how are you going to film yourself? What's your technology that you're going to be using, and do you have decisions made? How are you getting it? Who's helping you buy it, or and what are you choosing? I think that's my questions.
Thank you, Martha. So how you're filming yourself for your lessons, if I heard that correctly. Anybody have something already set up they want to share? Nope, I see lots of shaking heads. So
I have an iPad that was given to me. I got lucky, I guess, last year. I'd been asking for an iPad for a long time for filming concerts because I was using my personal iPad, which has like no storage. So I kept having like a student videotape, and then I'd run out of storage on my iPad. So in the middle of the concert, they'd have to go to their phone or something like that. So I'd been asking for an iPad, and then I got it like a week before we went into distance learning. So I haven't even used it, but that's what I'm planning on using, just putting it on a music stand in the back. So nothing too fancy, but yeah.
I will say that the iPhone and even the Android phone, the newer phones, the cameras on those phones are great quality, and the microphones work decently. But most of you probably know you can go and get a little extender and buy a mic that you plug in to your headphone port, and that would pick you up in the classroom really well. So you could put it on a stand if you're not concerned with getting multiple angles. That works well. For all of the live streaming that I've been doing this summer, it's been with my laptop. And actually, midsummer, I went and bought a new laptop with a little more power just because I'm making so many videos, right? But I think a basic laptop camera would work too if you get a music stand. The key is going to be, if you've got kids in that classroom, putting it somewhere where it's not going to get, bumped and, just in the way of normal activity. So I think those are your two easiest options, with one caveat. With the laptop, do you have a plug-in in your room? Do you have an Ethernet cable? Because if you can plug in, if you're live streaming especially, you're going to want to be plugged into the Ethernet in your school so that you're not subject to the whims of the Wi-Fi. When things flip, you're directly wired, and that's going to give you a more consistent stream. If you're just recording, then that's not a problem. You can just record and then upload to some platform later. Beyond that, do any of you still have those camcorders that we used to use? You remember the days when everybody had camcorders? And like, I looked at mine the other day and I was like, oh, you were such a trusty fellow. It's like this big. I think that technology still works. You might have to get an adapter to plug the cartridge into your laptop, but if you have an old camcorder on a tripod, that works. And speaking of tripods, you can get a tripod for your cell phone too. So this is stuff that you can get off Amazon really quickly, really inexpensively. And the iPad too, Emma, for that matter. You could get a tripod for your iPad, as I understand it too. Yeah. Any other thoughts in that realm? Yeah, Rebecca?
Question, Philip, when you record on your computer, what do you use for, what do you use?
Yeah, so there's a couple options. When I'm doing the streaming program, the live stream in the mornings, we have a streaming platform that we use. So there's a couple out there. They do cost something. StreamYard is the one that I like the most right now because it's really easy to use, a really easy interface, and it works with my Wi-Fi. And it's really affordable. In fact, you can use StreamYard for free if you're willing to have their logo on it, their branding. So you might have some issues there if you have to stream with your district, getting access to that platform. You'd have to sort that out. But it's just StreamYard. I'll put it in the chat here.
Okay.
And then the other one that we used was Stage 10. We used that for a while, and that one was fancy, but we actually had more problems with it, frankly. So I do like this StreamYard platform here. In fact, I can put a link in while we're talking. I'll just link to there.
Great. Thank you, Philip.
Yeah, I think my challenges with that is if I'm also teaching to live students in the room, I would need to use my laptop to be like screen sharing at the same time. And so then it's like,
Yep.
Our district has not bought anything new for us right now. I do have an iPad also. And so, yeah, I should look into getting a stand for that probably to then be screen sharing with my computer, but videotaping from my.
Yeah. Have they talked to you about that at all? I mean, that might be a question
No.
to raise. So part of my role, my mind is advocacy for you. If you have to use something personal, which I did all the time when I taught public schools, right? I was guilty of that. Make sure you're documenting and they give you reimbursement for it. You know, if you're using your cell phone, that needs to be accounted for in some way or another. And I don't know if the districts have thought through those plans yet, if they're expecting you to do both. So that's a good question to raise, because you're not doing this because you want to, right? They're saying you will do this. So, um, and then I don't know how many schools still have those cameras in the. But then again, everybody's going to want the camera, right? Every other teacher's going to want to borrow the media center camera. So, um, yeah, I would be raising those questions if I were you all. Is okay, what am I going to use to do this? And if I have to use my own technology, are you going to reimburse me for in some way to for the wear and tear? Um, Also with recording on your camera, you could just, if you're just creating videos, Rebecca, you asked this question, just whatever your normal software is. So if you have QuickTime
Yeah.
movies, you could just make the movie with your default camera program. And then, you know, you do the usual thing. You can edit it if you want to in some editing software, iMovie or whatever, and then post it to whatever platform you're using, Schoology or um, what's the one that we use here with the elementary kids? You think I'd remember the name of it? I had to log my son into it every day, but I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, it'll come back next week.
Google Classroom maybe, or
No, it was the other one with the S. It's
Seesaw.
Seesaw?
Seesaw. Thank you.
Seesaw.
That's the one, Seesaw. See, you just had to say C, and I was like, Seesaw.
Great.
Bethany, you had a question earlier, Bethany. You were chiming in with something.
The question is about singers' masks. Who's actually wearing the singer's mask, like from the Broadway Relief Project, or maybe something similar? Or who's just wearing a mask, a cloth mask, disposable mask for singing?
It's a great question, and we dove into this a little bit yesterday. Um, so, and I read that a little bit more. Rebecca and Martha and Kristen, you were on the call yesterday.
Yeah.
So there's some preliminary stuff that's just come out over the weekend, and I'll find that post again and share it again. That the singer's mask, and they didn't say which brand, but that those specialty masks were not testing as well as some of your basic masks. So for me, and I didn't say what I do, and I apologize. So I'm with Vocal Essence Community Group, and then I work in a church, Westwood Lutheran Church. So working with singers of all ages in the community setting, we are just talking about the materials, that it needs to have multiple layers, that it needs to be tight fitting. So talking about, you know, the specificity of what the mask should be. In fact, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen with you of a document that we have been preparing and that we share with our singers, our covenant. And I do encourage you, if you're singing in person, Bethany, to have something that your principal administrators will let you get the students to. I don't know if they can sign it, but at least that they can see it and know what the expectations are. So we took the serious approach of, I want to make sure everybody knows what these terms are, because I had to do a lot of learning myself about what's what. And so we put the terms in first, and maybe your district's already done this, but if it's not somewhere close, I would share that with them. For instance, with high school students, close contact is something I'm having to teach my high school students, because while they want to be safe, they also love each other so much. And we've been getting together throughout the summer, every other week, I should say that. So we've been singing and fellowshipping and whatnot. And that's the hardest thing for them, is they just want to get close. And I'm like, do you realize if you get too close, now you're in close contact, and now you've got a quarantine if something happens. If you keep your distance, if someone gets sick and you don't necessarily have to quarantine because you're not in close contact, which was a new thing that I'd learned from all of this. So we put all this stuff in there, but then we got down here to the covenant, and here's mask. Like, I couldn't be more specific, right? It's like, we got to have the nose and mouth covered, no gaps. And we were looking at something yesterday that Karen Lutkin was showing us, and you can find it online. Lots of nurses have been doing videos teaching you how you can make the surgical style masks, disposable masks. You can make them tighter fits by wrapping the loop around and doing something right here at the spot where it comes up against your face. it really works well. Go back and watch yesterday's video because we had Karen on the spotlight, and it really takes all the gaps away and it gets that tight fit that we're looking for. And everything that I've read from the aerosolization study, and then from the other folks who have been doing some testing, and I'm not an expert, but what I've seen is that those masks, most of them do just as well, if not better, than the things that are more expensive. And so to answer your question, for us, we are not requiring people to buy a specific mask. It's more of, it needs to fit these 6 or 7 bullets here. And we're going to walk around and be the kind of czar of mask at the beginning of the first rehearsal. I've just been buying masks at Target, Lunds and Byerly's, and just checking them out, seeing what the difference is in those disposable masks are, and then kind of, honestly, it's not scientific, going, this one seems to be sturdier, better, tighter fitting, and those are the ones that I'm going to have on hand as extra masks when people have issues, to use the ones that I think are better for singing on hand. We might know more in a month or two, Bethany, if those resonance masks that are 34 or 40 bucks are really worth it. Right now, it seems like it's kind of skeptical. Do you have a plan in place already, or are you still thinking that through down there?
I wanted to use the disposable masks. Usually they're blue and 3 layers. Sometimes you can find them 4. And then I noticed in that aerosol study from Colorado that sometimes the air seeps out this way. So my super powerful singers, like I have like older kiddos that are like opera stars, right? I think they should wear a shield as well. I'm going to suggest it, but not require it, because we are going to be outside as well.
I mean, that's not a bad idea, right? You can't go wrong asking for more. If you're outside, everything that I know about outside, if you're singing, into the wind, not the wind at your back, singing into the wind and whatnot, those aerosols are going to disperse whatever seeps out, because the mass is going to catch about 90%. And if you keep them out of the cloud. So for me, I don't agree with the 6 feet is enough. So we're doing 8 to 10 feet minimally. And then you're outside of the cloud. So have you considered asking them just to wear another piece of fabric over the top of the mask if they can't get access to a face shield? Like a bandana alone is not going to help, but maybe a bandana or another cloth mask on top of the 3 or 4 layer mask might help to keep it pressed down a little more.
Good idea.
Yeah, but I talked about the Stormtrooper choir. I was all over that for a while, going, wouldn't it be cool if we could just all have our Stormtrooper helmets on and make that a thing? What other questions and thoughts are out there? Or we can dig deeper into the mask if you all want to.
I'm getting, it's called a KN95 mask, and they're a little bit more structured. They are not quite the N95, which they're reserving for just medical people, but it's almost that way. I'm getting it through a company called Public Goods. So I've ordered a box, but they are $4.40 a piece, which seems expensive to just keep doling out. And I don't know how sturdy they are, how much they last, but it's the KN95. I'm going to try it and see if that gives them a little bit more of a pocket. Whoop, to sing. Yep, you found it.
It's amazing how good we get at this stuff, right? Just staying online all the time. Yeah. Interesting. I'd not heard of this one before. It looks like you've got the thing at the top where you can bend it down to keep it close on your nose. How far does it come back on the side, Martha? That would be my only concern. It looks like it doesn't really extend.
Well, if you, I think there might be, do they show? Oh, they don't. Okay.
That's it. That's another view.
Okay.
That's the side view there.
So I think it comes, around your cheek and under your chin. I've also have another picture from another company called, it's Surgical Disposable Masks.
It's 5 layers of protect. Interesting. 5 layers of polypropylene and cotton. So that's nice. You got multiple layers.
Yeah.
They are saying that it will do 95% of the particles away. Yeah.
So what I'm in, if it's something that seems singable, I wouldn't be doing it in my large choirs, maybe my small chamber group, that when they need to be intense and singing, that's the one that they would use. I may even have to say, we're not going to buy tuxes and dresses this year. We're going to invest in keeping safe. That's going to be our equipment this year. So I don't know. I'm going to see what they're like. They're supposed to arrive this week. I've sent them down to my daughters too to see. They're trying to perform themselves in Tennessee, to see if they want to play around using them as well.
Mm-hmm. So this is the only negative thing that I see here. I don't like reviews usually, but I've been reading about these things.
Yeah.
Especially people who think it shouldn't prevent eyeglass fogging. That cracks me up. It's like every mask is gonna fog your glasses up. Okay, get contacts or just deal with it like me.
Yeah.
But this right here, someone says it does move around a bit if you talk. So I would look for that when you first.
Yes, exactly.
Because my experience. Thank you for this though, because I did not know this company and it looks really promising.
Yeah. And I went through all of those, and some of them too, that the elastic broke off. This is a kind of an interesting company. You have to join. So I've joined it for a 12-day trial, and just to sort of get these things in, and I'll probably unjoin because I don't want to pay $59 for a year for buying stuff I'm probably not going to buy. But if it's something usable, I would look for other avenues or ways to get something similar.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is that this company, because it's a newer company, they're super intent on trying to make everybody satisfied with their stuff. And so it looks like from all those, those discussions, that they're attending to some of these complaints right away. And I'm wondering if they're kind of developing the product as they go.
Right. Huh. Rebecca's in one of those rooms. You have the motion sensor, right? And it looks like we lost Bethany, so I'm on the lookout to see if she makes it back or not. Hopefully, when it was right when you came in, Jason. So we had another person sitting in that spot. So it's like you all just traded places there. The one thing I was saying that I noticed with young people, high schoolers, is that they do fuss with it a lot. And so one of the things we've had to talk about was, it's on your face. It stays on your face. Yes, you can adjust it, but it stays up unless you're doing something like eating, which most of you wouldn't have to deal with eating. But I do think be prepared for that about, make sure it is a mask that they're not going to have to adjust too much and fuss with too much. I wonder if, since they're so new, Martha, if you wrote them, and this is where I benefit from the Philip Brunel mentality, like if you don't know, you don't know what you don't ask, and you got a 50% chance of getting what you want. Have you thought about writing them and saying, hey, I've invested in your mask. I wonder if you've considered making them a little bit, you could talk about what it needs to be so it sits on the face more for people to sing with and see if they would create something.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely, I want to give them a good product review, and even, try to contact them more directly, and let them know what I want it for too. I'm sure that anything's advertising and promotion. So yeah, I totally have that in mind.
And I'm going to drop this in the chat in case you all want to find this public goods site here. So there it is there, in case you want to check it out yourself if you're looking in the mask market.
And there's others. I don't know if this is one. So it's a KN95 mask.
That's the type of it, right? Okay.
The type. And N95 is the ones that are reserved for medical people.
Right.
But a KN95 is.
It's funny that my folks have been I'm going to take you all with me on a journey for just a second because I want to show this to you, a little show and tell. So you're going to see my kitchen. I can't say it's clean, but I'm going to come through anyway. Because we're thinking about performing in these masks. You know, that was the first thing I had to break through. Speaking of Philip Brunel, love the fact that he is adapting and on board with this, but we're doing video performances. And I was like, Philip, you do realize we have to wear the mask in the performances too. And at first he looked at me and I was like, it's a deal breaker. We have to wear the mask in performance. So at first I'd just given up hope. I was like, it is what it is. And then I went to Target again. I've just been looking at masks and I found these. Covers up, right? It really does cover well. That alone would not work, but what I love about it is that there's a place here on the side for you to insert a filter. So we can get the filters and put them in here. And so I'm thinking of just buying a stock of these and looking for more. They're also by size. They come 2 to a pack. These are only $4 for 2 of these. Whereas when I bought the others, you know, they're like $20 for 10 or whatever, you know, some of the disposable ones with 4 or 5 layers. So that's my thing that I'm going to try to see. Maybe we can still get some aesthetic uniformity while being really safe. So for those of you who really have to do some kind of public facing presentation, I think there are options out there to get uniformity. You know, frankly though, Martha, with your KN95s, you could just put the central logo on it and it's good to go, you know. Right? So if that matters to you, there are options in that regard. I think safety is the thing that we're most concerned about on the whole, right? And welcome officially, Jason. Jason's at Irondale High School, everyone. And are you all hybrid, Jason, too? We all shared plans.
We are all online. Our district got hammered last week. I live in Roseville, and Roseville went all online, and Mounds View was getting pummeled, meetings at the same time. A couple days later, we got a text said we're all online. So
Peer pressure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that, and they gave a series of assurances to the community and to the staff that they hadn't actually done. For example, we have cleaning stations and things like that prepared, and then people ask their custodians and their secretaries, and secretaries say, yeah, there's no plan for us to have barriers up. The custodians say, yeah, all the cleaning materials are back ordered until mid-September. They say we've updated all the filters in the HVAC system, and we've turned them up so we get all outside air or whatever. And the custodians say, yeah, nothing's happened here. We know there are rooms with problems, and they have no plan to fix them. Now your staff does not trust you, and there are enough staff who teach and live in the district that now the community knows that pretty well. So that's why they were getting hammered. That, and some staff were trying to take leaves and got doctor's notes or to teach only online versus in person. And the district came back and said, you need to have specific cases or specific illnesses listed here, which breaks huge HIPAA rules. So there's a lot of bad blood going on. So they acquiesced and said online through September 18th, and we'll decide. So we'll see how that goes. But
yeah, it's not the first time I've heard of cases like that. And you know, I do have a little space of grace because everyone's trying to figure it out. But then there's also, it's infuriating, right? Because we've had all summer to be thinking about this and all spring.
They've had time. I work in the political world as a city council member. I understand the pressures they're in, even though I'm really glad I'm not them. But you don't ever lie to people,
right?
Especially about things in health and pandemics. It's just a really bad choice, and that's some of the area they've kind of gotten into with it. And I'm not sure why, except to try to make it look good, that they've done that. So that's. They have horrible choices. There's no right answer right now, but the truth is always worthwhile.
Under promise and over deliver. There you go. Yeah. Well, welcome to the room, Jason. It's always good to be in the space with you. What else is on your mind, friends? I can see the
I have a technical thing. Yesterday we were talking about the air filtration things. And so, Philip, I think you mentioned you kind of, though it wasn't your favorite thing to study, that you had studied a little more. So I did ask about it, and they said they're keeping they're upping it so the dampers are open as
That's
much as
good.
possible. And then
That's a
they
good
said
thing.
something, I was going to see if you knew what it meant. It's all capitals, ASHRAE, RAE,
Hmm.
62.1 and 62.2. Does that mean anything to you or to anybody? Or
Depends on what they set that in the context to. So the ASHRAE is the Society of Heating and da 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 da. That's their acronym. And let me just see. ASHRAE 62.1 standards. Here we go. I'm going to put this on Zoom for us all. On screen share, rather. We are on Zoom. So this is some of their standards. So they are abiding by standard 62.1 and 62.2. And this tells you that this was revised in 2019 to be the minimum standards. What that means is that they are meeting the minimum, they're meeting the minimum standards, which is a good thing because not all of our spaces do meet the minimums. So if you look at all these things here, it's basically telling you what the updates are to. So we'd have to go back and read the original to know exactly what it covers. But my layperson's terms tells me that they have a system that's in good working order. By opening the dampers, they're bringing in more outside air, which is good. It still doesn't tell us what the ACH is, what the air change rate is in your room. And that's what you're going to need to know as far as, remember we were talking yesterday about letting the room sit and what that looks like.
yeah, that's why I was asking. I didn't get any more information than this. So
And sometimes it's knowing the square footage and you can compute it yourself, but you're, yeah, I shouldn't say I'm surprised, but it's unfortunate that, they haven't done that for each of the rooms in the schools because you really need to know that. Here's the 62.2. So this is all good news that, you've got a good system there. I still don't, I want to look up what ASHRAE is. It's the American Heating and, sorry, it's going to drive me crazy now. So this is when I don't know something. American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning. I couldn't remember the R. Refrigerating and Air Conditioning Engineers. Yeah, so that's kind of the governing body in these things. So I'm just going to put this whole page in the chat because that can be nighttime reading, with a glass of wine or whatever your beverage of choice is, just sit down and read a page or two of that as it relates to ventilation and air filtration. And it's just helpful for us to kind of know this a little bit. To refresh the memory for those who weren't here yesterday, I was impressing the importance of talking to your facilities managers and just asking them in your own words, what's going on in my room? Is the air coming in from the outside? Is it being recycled in the inside? What's the capacity of this room supposed to be? How long does it take for the system to clean the air out of my room and start over? And just insist that they answer you because you just deserve to know that in your spaces.
Yeah, can I add one thing, Philip? Sorry, Jason.
Yeah, go ahead, Liz, then Jason.
I guess I'm wondering how, or if any of you have a good idea on whether it's just that we make sure we keep saying it to people or make sure we're correcting people when they say the wrong thing online, because no one's trying on purpose to do something dangerous. But there are two key things that you've just been talking about that I've seen misinformation being spread on, all these online forums that we're all in.
Really? Okay.
Which is that you have to leave the room during that air exchange. Like if you've been singing in the room, you have to leave. And there's like, even in my own district yesterday on our first meetings, we had people being like, oh, well, I'm just gonna, we'll be in the choir room and we'll sing for like 20 minutes, then we'll sit down and do some theory, and then we'll like stand up and do this. And I'm like, no, you have to leave. And so like they're getting the like, don't sing for more than 30 minutes, but they totally miss that you can't just sit there in the aerosols, and that's making me super nervous. And also that, again, like that 20 minutes of leaving the room is being touted because that's the average
Right.
HVAC system does an air exchange 3 times per hour, which is where the 20 minutes is coming from.
Hmm.
But you have to ask your custodial or your facilities people
Right.
what your building's HVAC system does, because it might not be
Hmm.
average.
It may be
And
one,
like,
which means an hour, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And
No,
like those are hugely critical pieces that people are not.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
thank you for that, Liz. And yesterday we talked about the worst case scenario was, what if you absolutely have no place to go? Like you can't leave the room. And I made the example yesterday of taking my kids just on the hall, walking the halls because they weren't following instructions when I was a first year teacher. So we'd go walk the hall with my middle schoolers when I was learning how to teach. So if I can't leave my room, we talked about yesterday, the worst case scenario is to sing for the shortest amount of time possible, right? And then sit and maybe move them to the walls or whatever. Like it's not a win-win, but you're absolutely right. The ideal is to get the heck out of Dodge and then let the room turn over and come back in. We did talk about another workaround that I think that's important to share here is if you can leave your room, but you don't know how long you can leave for, they haven't built in that passing time, could you end your singing early enough in the class so that you go somewhere else? Maybe you make a deal with your friends in the PE department and you sit in the bleachers of the gym. Maybe it's in the cafeteria. And oh, there's another room with light sensors. And then you stop singing, you leave, and then you come back for the next class. Maybe you don't bring them in right away or something, but is there a way you can buffer in that time for the room to turn over? Because I do find it hard to believe that most of your districts have built your scale, major schedules, so you have that built-in time for recycling of the air in your spaces. But thank you for raising those points, Liz, for clarifying that for sure. Jason, you were going to say something.
Yeah, it took a bit, but we got estimates, or they were actually to the second decimal point, so theoretically they're not estimates, but they are estimates in the sense that for the air exchange rate, they used it based on the drawings and the engineering of the system when it was put in 17, 18 years ago. Um, and then creating a number that they expect the air exchange rate to be. And it was different. They said most interior rooms are this, most exterior rooms are this. And I'd asked for specifically our music rooms, one of our gyms that is less used. We have a new flat floor, multi-purpose space, and then our new auditorium that's being built. And what are the, because then they got very specific. Now my concern with that is it's based on engineering from a company that didn't hook up the air system to the administration wing. Like they set it up and said, here we go. And then the first day everyone's like, why is there no air in here? So we're using the engineering of people who didn't set it up right and had to be fixed literally almost every day for the first 6-8 years of its life. So I worry about that, but they were able to calculate it very specifically for some of our spaces, not just an average for the school. So I certainly would look at that, and I'm very pleased. My choir room was just over 8 exchanges per hour, so that's a great thing.
Wow.
And we're looking at using our cafeteria as a space that won't work every hour, but certainly work for some hours as a way to get out of this space. We happen to have this multi-purpose space. Eventually, we'll have an auditorium back, but working with our band, my band colleague, orchestra people we're not so worried about, but that band colleague, that we would be rotating some spaces and making sure we're not stuck in a space for over a half hour.
So just to clarify, Jason, that's great that you said that. And I'm not trying to talk down anybody, but just quick math. So Jason said 8 changes per hour. That means every 7 point something minutes, the system is cleaning out the room. So the minimum is to leave the room for 8 minutes. The better thing to do would be to leave the room for 3 changes, which would be 24 minutes.
Yeah. So
I just want to make sure everybody got that in a sense there. And again, apologize if it felt like I was talking down to you there. That's just really impressive. That's really hopeful, I should say.
It is
working.
But our band room is in that it was like 2.5 or 3, because part of it is the higher the ceiling, the bigger volume of the space, the slower it changes over.
Mm-hmm.
So my band director, his eyes get big, and I go sweet, but who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Martha put in the chat that she's interested in knowing where people have negotiated to take your students when you clear out. Have you all had a chance to negotiate that with your peers yet? Has that even come up?
I guess I'll just add, like, Jason mentioned kind of the cafeteria and the auditorium. We at our building just like we thought we had a plan between the band and the choir because we have these block schedule things that are happening. I forgot to mention that in our hybrid schedule. So we have 75-minute block of time. Yeah, right. So we had worked out like the choir gets the auditorium for the first 20 minutes and then we'll be back in our choir room, and then the band we'd leave the auditorium sitting for the middle of that 75-minute chunk, and then the band would go in maybe the last, or if that's just an example, last 30 minutes or whatever. But we had this kind of like, yeah, somebody could use it at the beginning, we could leave it empty for a while, and then somebody could use it at the end. But then we just got like, they're trying to figure out where to put all these kids that are taking these online classes but are in the building. And so like just today, one of the administrators was like, hey, why don't we use the auditorium? And we're like, no, don't use the auditorium. So like many things, it's changing, right? I think we're going to be outside if we can be for the first month or so here until it snows. And we also are lucky at our building. We have more of a performing arts center because we had a joint thing with a local community theater when our building was being built. So we have a black box theater also, which is a bigger space than my classroom. So that's another like bigger place that we could negotiate. So yeah, cafeteria. We were going to do the auditorium. We'll have to update that later, I guess. And then we do have a black box theater too.
Well, we are Minnesotans, so as I said yesterday, I was shocked when they told us, our sons in kindergarten, we will go outside every day unless it's like negative something ridiculous in my mind. And they went outside every day. So I'm like, dadgummit, we can sing outside. Kids, bring your coats, bring your double mask, and let's go outside and sing. I somewhat jest, but I think outside is our best friend right now, right? It's the best option we have. I'm curious if you want to shift the conversation a little bit into teaching and into like what we can do, thinking about, have you all started thinking through like what you hope to accomplish, vocally when you're in person or hybrid, and this might be coming in with your different plans. Like, how are you all thinking of structuring your classes so that you're making forward progress on something that's not too much, not too little, but that Goldilocks that's just right for the situation? Anybody want to share what they've been noodling on?
I'll jump in. I've declared no shoots this year, and but we've talked in the other forums about some more flexible things. Some things are going to be easier, so that when we get together, they can be successful. When we go, or if we go back to a blended or hybrid model, I still will only see them once a week, in a block, as Liz described also. And so given that, there's only so much you can put together, and using some of the online things as practice time for individual parts, some of the things we talked about in the other session, that would be the time that we are singing together, but kind of taking everything down a notch or two or three, while still trying to provide that singing, that harmony. Singing in harmony is important for me, but the rigor of the pieces is something I'm dramatically changing from my perspective. So that's kind of how I'm looking at that time. I'm even looking at, I usually do small group lessons with my students during their lunches and things like that. And I'm not going to promise anything to them yet, but I think that's the kind of thing I might do online still. That would happen when we're not in that format, not trying to have those smaller group things during their lunches or before or after school, but put that kind of thing so that that time in class is so focused on singing together. Their duets, I think duets are going to be a starting point for some things, or simple 3 and 4 part things. So those are my ideas for now, but we're going to learn a lot soon.
I downloaded the Justice Choir songbook and the We Rise songbook, and I'm hoping that I can use some of those songs. And when I was going through those, I thought those would be it would be a really good opportunity to do that. And I'd also thrown around the idea, I had touched base with our nursing home and our activities director there and said, I'd really like them to get a list together of all of the residents' favorite songs, and then maybe have the kids in small groups or individually learn some of those songs and put together a video to share with the nursing home patients at some point. Keep them singing that way a little bit and help them think about some other people besides themselves and how difficult it must be for those nursing home residents.
Nice. I love that idea of connecting with the community and people who are also impacted by this. Yeah.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
And I just dropped the ReRise Songbook PDF in there in case you haven't seen it. What I love about it is the hyperlinks takes you to the recordings. So it's all oral tradition, but it's some good stuff in there. A lot of good possibilities.
One of the things is we worked so hard on music last year and didn't get to perform it. And I know a lot of my students that are, continuing on would like to have to be able to keep working with that music somehow, or bringing it to some sort of closure, because it just dissipated, and there were some great pieces in there. But so starting off with something familiar that they've already worked on that is in parts and harmony. But I also know that for even my middle, it's called my mixed advanced choir, which is large. But I look at it more of a junior through or sophomore through senior group, and sort of a more intermediate group, that they're still going to need quite a bit of unison or canonic, or even, really even unison singing, just to keep melodies going, and certainly short stuff. So in part of my brain is also trying to work with sort of an overall idea that each of my 3 levels of choirs there would be a bit of that in each of their lesson plans, with different applications of that. So that's one of the things that I feel like it's going to be really important for me. Otherwise, I lose track of who's where and what if I don't have some threads tying them together. Sort of the ideas that I'm banding around and probably using, especially in those beginning choirs, having maybe my middle group start with those songs, record that, so that I have a sing along for my beginning groups to sing with that are peers.
Yeah. That technique is really useful that we've talked about in some of the sessions, of finding ways to get the voices in the room. So taking the time to have them record synchronously if you're distance, and then taking the time to line those tracks up, and then pumping that back in the room. Scott Hannah-Weir, who's out in California, he calls it an iterative approach to some of this virtual stuff, and I like that model. The Song Along platform that I've shared with you all is ready to be tested now. So I've been working with it, and we're ready to bring other people on board who want to test it. So any of you that want to do that, what I'll do is bring you in on one of my projects, and then give you the ability to then you can create your own and test it out. Hopefully that will allow you, once that gets running, because what it does, for those who don't know about the Song Along, it fulfilled the dream where I'm not a virtual choir guy. In fact, I don't even say the word virtual with my singers. I just call it physically distanced, because we're very real people who happen to be engaging on these platforms. But what it does is it allows your singers to use one device for everything. You upload the parts, you upload the sheet music, you upload the guide tracks, a conducting track, and they just have to log in to that link that you send them, and they look at the screen and they sing what they hear. And then for you, it spits out a product, and I can actually share the one that just came from my church choir today that I haven't had a chance to work with. It shares a product that is synchronized that you could use as is. So like once you render it, it just spits this out, and it's already pretty well synced up. Let's see if I can play it today. Let's say, there we go. It's spinning now going, you're putting me on display, so I'm not going to play. Anyway, what I did with it last time, and some of you saw this already, I pulled the videos out and made it fancy. But I intend to use this with vocal lessons a lot for our rehearsal process, to be able to just take it and spit it back into the room for them to hear themselves. So my problem is I leave tabs open for hours on end. So it's like looking at me going, what do you want me to do? Obviously. And you're going to hear that same information. I said,
You hearing him now?
Introduction altos.
Okay.
Here's your starting pitch. So this is funny because it's got all my guide tracks in there too, because I was testing something.
3.
Yeah, that's pretty good for something that just comes out. Like I don't have to do any editing. So now I can turn that back into a rehearsal, right? So that's the hope with that, is it becomes a real useful tool for rehearsing, as well as being able to, then you can download those and get each individual track. And if you want to make something fancy, now you just have to focus on your video editing software and not all of your other stuff there. So that's one option. I do think there are other easier options too of focusing just on audio alone. So if you've been using Soundtrap and having the kids collaborate that way, laying tracks down, one person lays a track down, another person lays a track down. There are other ways to get at like the real collaborative pieces that you can do there as well. What other plans? I kind of interrupted you all sharing your plans. I'm curious who else has got some stuff going on, because I know you all have been thinking of some stuff. And this is a great safe space to share it and get some boost ups and maybe some extra thoughts with it.
I've been really trying to study Note Fight Learn and getting kids involved with composing, and they composing things for themselves, and also it has sound check in it, so that way they could practice their parts and see how they're doing on their parts. And then I'm doing Flipgrid. Haven't tried much with that yet, but trying some Flipgrid also. And then WeVideo, our school, all of our students have WeVideo to be able to put together their own videos. So they could, and I even tried layering some vocal tracks yesterday, and I could layer the vocal tracks using WeVideo. So
I would go, if you have WeVideo, I would use that. I love Flipgrid. I know the person who started Flipgrid actually is a member of my former church. I think Flipgrid is great, but WeVideo seems to be easier to put things together in the platform. You know, Flipgrid is great to take things to another platform or to have the students comment on each other. So the first project we did in COVID was I invited each singer to share a song of hope. And because we're a community choir, we put it out in social media. But if I were a school teacher, it would have then been something where they would each comment on each other's song of hope and give boost ups. And it was a kind of way to get them singing solo and to sharing stuff. So that's what Flipgrid is great about. But WeVideo, like you said, you can layer stuff. That's really cool. I've been interested in that for a while, and I haven't played with it much, but sounds promising. Any other
I'm
thoughts
just
up there?
thinking out loud here, just because I know when, I think it was Cheryl was saying she had been looking at the Justice Choir songbook stuff, and we all were like nodding our heads like this. And I know in other groups or other discussions I've had with other Minnesota people that there are a lot of us that are thinking about that, but I wonder if there's a way to make that collaborative. Like if we're not looking at doing, like my district has, you know, they haven't come out with any sort of exact guidance on whether we're allowed to do performances of any kind. We know that they're canceled for now because all large group gatherings are canceled for now. But I wonder if there'd be a way to, like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like if there's a lot of us that are going to do something like that, maybe that's a way to make them feel like they're part of something bigger, even if they don't get to have a concert at our school. Sorry, Philip, are you?
No, what I hear you saying is that based on what Martha said to me yesterday, she gave me a strong edict in my role as community advocate for you all. I'm like, should this be a vocal essence project? Should I put together a mass like statewide submit to sing, one of the Justice Choir songs, and we pay for getting it all edited? And
Yeah,
because you're
maybe.
thinking like a virtual project, right? Like
Yeah.
Conspirare tonight, in fact, they're releasing their All of Us video, which had like 477 singers. And your
Yeah.
school did that, right, Rebecca?
Mine did. Yeah.
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 Were they in that project then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because we hosted Considering Matthew Shepard at my school
Right.
on the 20th anniversary. And so if you were someone who hosted it or participated, then you were invited to submit tracks. So yeah, it's tonight. So it'll be interesting. I would love to participate in a Justice Choir project with you, Philip. That would be awesome.
Let me see how we can make this real cool, because we're really good friends with Melanie Demore, and I'm wondering if I could get Melanie to do something. If you don't know Melanie Demore, she's a vocal activist out of Oakland. Um, I'm just thinking about a way to make it really be impactful, and
Yeah.
then the students could have engagement with this person, maybe through a video or something before they sing the song and layer it. And her one foot in front of the other is amazing. If you haven't heard that one, that's in the book, but what you don't get are the 4 parts that she's written for it. So it actually is a 4-part song that would be really cool to do a big virtual choir of. And the other backstory, and this is recording, but I'm going to say it anyway. She wrote that song. We were doing a residency together in 2016 at North High School in Minneapolis and Johnson High School in St. Paul, and then 2 middle schools, both in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And it was the day after Donald Trump was elected. She got in my car that morning, and I'm going to share a little bit of personal stuff here, so forgive me, don't judge me, but we were not happy with what happened. That was not what we expected to happen. It kind of caught us off guard, and she said, Philip, we just got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. And that song was born, and within minutes she sang it in the school with those kids who were concerned, because there's a lot of Black and brown kids who were concerned about their future, and so that song is now taken off a life of its own. And so politics aside, it's just kind of one of those things, the power of, music responding to things in our lives. So yeah, I'll take that challenge up. And I bet some of our other colleagues, I know the National Lutheran Choir did a big thing where they were inviting faith communities to sing with them on a big virtual choir. Because that's part of it, right? It's the cost behind, if you don't have the time to learn the technology yourself, which if you're interested in that, Core More has all summer been doing great training sessions. And I know I brought Troy in, but all those videos are still up on YouTube. So, if you have 20 hours to just binge watch and get your editing software out and just, drink your pop and edit some test edit software, you get good at it. Because I honestly didn't think I would ever do that stuff. And I've gotten to be decent now where it works for my church services really well. And I can do it pretty quickly. But if you don't want to do that, this might be a great way, to make that accessible. How many of you are thinking of, because you've raised a good point, Liz, how many of you are thinking of performances? Like, is that even on your radar, or are you more thinking right now, let's just make sure we have the experiences of making music together? Is that where everybody is? Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up? Sorry, Jason, we keep talking at the same time. Has anyone's in this room's district made a directive about that? Because I've heard through the grapevine that Stillwater School District has said no music performances for the entire year.
Oh, wow.
But I haven't heard anybody else say that. And in some ways, that's actually, we were talking as a department today that, like, while that's not what we would hope for, like, I think a lot of us still are trying to have hope that maybe by the end of the year, things will be looking a little bit differently. But at the same time, like, that's actually helpful as a teacher, because I'm going to structure things a lot differently. Like, you can be successful either way, but I'm going to structure things a lot differently if my administration is going to expect me to be producing something in terms of a product like a concert than if I'm if it's about the experience and if it's about building skills and building community, that's different than working towards a performance. So I'm just curious if anybody else has heard anything like that.
We we have been working with our administrators and they have not made a decision yet. I hold out this strange hope for my fall concert. It's usually the week of MEA, and to have a parking lot concert. Each group can come in and they could park every other. High schools have many resources, including large parking lots, but they could park every other one. The family can sit in the car, and the student stands in front of the car and sings. And it's probably just 15 minutes, but then do one for each choir or something like that, so you don't have too many people. I hold out some sort of faint hope for something like that where they are singing together, but they would be outside. I did a event for my seniors at the end of the school year where they all parked and they sang in their car. We sang the national anthem and the school fight song and I don't know, something else, but they were in their cars and whatever. But I feel like at this point we might be able to branch out and do this other thing, and they would be super distanced in that way, and yet the families would be able to hear a little bit, and the students would be able to hear and see each other a little bit. So I hold that faint hope, but I understand what Liz is saying, that hey, in the end, we're going to have to think about this differently. So my holiday concert, I don't expect to do it. Maybe there are some things that get put together in an electronic way, but yeah, thinking about it very differently as far as what we're and how we're teaching.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jason. I can see both also. I do think this is a chance for you as the educator to really think back into your core values of what's most important to you and lean into that in this moment. And I think each of us can make a different choice, and that would be the right choice for us in our situation. So I'm not a big policy person. I would rather them leave it open to me, because if things do shift, you can make a decision. The parking lot stuff does work. So we did our first parking lot sing vocal lessons not long ago, and it was more of a community type sing. But I had a big speaker, and it was a very simple setup and a keyboard, and they loved it. And people across the street were standing out listening, and it was just great to see everybody and harmonize in real time, even though it was faint. And then, since some of you haven't seen these pictures, as I said, all summer I've been getting together with the SOTA singers, the vocal lesson singers of this age. So this was our last gathering, because so they're all 10 feet apart. And once I went all around, and I have little cones because I'm a tyrant, and everyone has a little cone that I place down so they know exactly where their chair goes. And I brought the chairs and they set them up. So I control the layout. And that's very important to me, because we were like 40 feet from this person to this person across, or maybe even more. It was like running a sprint across there. I was like, this time we can actually face each other. I feel good about us facing each other. And that was 3 weeks ago, and no one's sick. So my choice seemed to work out. This is what we've been doing most of the summer. It's this kind of staggered thing where they're like 10 feet apart there, and then this person's in the middle of that person 12 feet up. So Jason, to your parking lot approach, you could get your singers in some kind of formation that doesn't look like normal, but where they could hear each other, and then have the parents in the cars. And for 10, 15 minutes, create a little meaningful moment. I mean, if that's what you wanted to do, I think that's a valid option. But
It looks like some of these singers are masked and some are not. How are you handling that, Philip?
They're all masked. You just can't see. So Stefan had his down for that
that
moment.
dude, yeah. He's the one I could see
yeah.
those clips.
Yeah, he had his mask down for a moment there, which, as I told you earlier, my full disclosure, I have to stay on him. For a minute, they'll want to pull it down, and I'm like, mask up. You can't see my pool noodle here because you don't have any pictures of me, but I have two pool noodles. Is it in that one? I can't make it bigger. Where if they get too close or they pull their mask down too long, I whack them. It's like a 5-foot pool noodle. And so it just keeps them apart. It's a whack and love, hey, spread out. We need 6 feet there. So I encourage you to be creative outside. I do think that outside is our best bet. And the aerosols disperse so quickly when you're masked outside. I feel pretty good. Inside, I feel okay. Like we're going to take the risk with certain groups that say they want to be in person singing, but I don't feel great yet, but I feel okay about it. And I feel like it's worth exploring. But outside, I'm like all in. Like I feel like that works.
How do the students talk about being able to hear in those two different formats we're talking about? Do they say, hey, I can only sort of hear? Do they say, this is okay? Is it work really well in one, not the other way? Can you talk about that, please?
Well, forgive me for those who heard this yesterday. I'll just say it again. What they say is when they know the song, it feels better. And so what I've learned is when they know something, we're singing something they know, right away you can hear it. When I try to introduce something new, it's even the learning curve is even steeper than usual because they have no reinforcement around them. And so I found myself singing over singing, then trying to get them to get into it, which is why I'm going to get one of the microphones that Karen Luckin showed us yesterday. And forgive me, I don't have it in the chat here, but I can put it in the follow-up. We'll put it on the resources. She showed us a personal amplifier system that she's using that will have a microphone and it has its own speaker thing, and she puts it on under her mask. And so that's going to be really beneficial to be able to amplify your voice, because then they'll hear a little more from you, and I think it'll help them. As far as their hearing, I think they liked the formation where it was more like choir, the stagger. I mean, they like seeing each other, but it was harder to hear across the circle, right? But the stagger made it feel like, hey, this is just choir, but we're spread out. It's kind of the feedback that I got from them. And there, if you go on our Instagram page or our Facebook, there are a few recordings of us singing outside where we tested it out. I live streamed a couple of them just so people could see it can be done. So that's the option I would go with if I were doing something for real, like a real recording. But yeah, ask me in. No, we're going to pause because we're going to let them start school. At the end of September, I'll really know. Because we've got a couple of plans that we're going to test out for our real rehearsal. So we're once a week usually, but rather than meeting for 3 hours one day a week, we're going to meet for a very short period of time, one day a week in person, about an hour and a half. We're not going to sing that whole time, obviously, but that's our in person. And then we're adding a Zoom rehearsal. I should say we're keeping a Zoom rehearsal each week too, a short Zoom. And that's really a time to check in and give instructions. And then we can do some individual practice and stuff like that in rooms. Yeah. Any other final thoughts here? It's amazing how these conversations just zoom along and we reach the time that we set forth.
Philip, I'd love to see your rep ideas for your kids for soda.
Yeah, I'd love to too, Martha. No, just to be really transparent, with soda, I put it in their hands a little bit. We had our evaluation session just yesterday. So we're doing 4 concerts. They're all just, recordings that we're releasing. You'll see my leanings here. The first one is Imagine. The second one is Believe. The third is Create. And the fourth is Celebrate. And that's the theme. And then underneath it, it's Imagine a world where, believe in a world where, create a world where, celebrate a world where. And they're filling in what that means. And so we're kind of living into our role as change agents, as, ways that we can make the world be the place we want it to be. So there will be some Justice Choir, there will be some We Rise type stuff, but we're probably going to create a lot of stuff too. We're working with Kyle Peterson right now to create a new piece that could be used by other choirs where there's a space for you to insert your own material into a framework that we put in place. And so I'm kind of leaning into that, and then a hybrid of some solo stuff. So like I could imagine in the Imagine concert, pun intended there, that we may sing a little bit of John Lennon. Someone may sing that as a solo or a duet. In the Believe concert, we'll probably pull from the Prince of Egypt. You will when you believe. That's as far as I've gotten with specifics, because I kind of wanted to hear what was on their mind and then take it from there. And we also carry a body of repertoire back from year to year. And so I'm going to lean on that too. And we're going to insert some of the things that we know and love, just those heart songs. With Vocal Essence and with church, it's homophonic, it's 4-part, it's straightforward harmonically. The phrase structures are really predictable. So things that lend themselves to being online and small group in person. Because if you haven't seen my technique for online, this is my new conducting gesture. Sustain a chord, breathe. Next chord, breathe. Next chord. Like I can do this on Zoom. in real time with everybody unmuted, and I can hear the chords line up. So things that are homophonic, it's like I can rehearse those much more easily. So yeah, it's just going to be a year where I'm not worried about complexity with any of my groups. Yeah, any of the groups I lead. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. So tomorrow, tomorrow, one more time at the same time. So you're welcome to come back again. New people will jump in. The conversation may cycle around the same. It may be different. And then Thursday, I think I set the 10 o'clock time or whatever, just in case people couldn't catch any of them. But feel free to reach out about anything. And I think everybody put their email in the chat, and I can find most of you anyway from the list. But what I'll do is just plan to send you all the a song along invitation, because it seemed like everybody was interested in this room here. So in this recording, I have a couple of meetings.